My name is Colbert King, and I've been asked to be the train conductor. My job is to make sure that everybody gets on board, that we take off on time, that we come back and reach the station where you can depart at 9 o'clock on the dot. And that's my sole purpose. But it's also my added pleasure to be with you this morning. 10 years ago, exactly May 31st, 2013, I wrote a column about Samaritan Ministry and the miracle it performs in helping people make lasting changes in their lives. For my troubles, Samaritan Ministry may be the master of ceremonies for its fundraising breakfast. I note that it's been 10 years since I performed this honored task. 10 years. Tell me, David, did I say something wrong? You may not know this, but the King family and Samaritan Ministry live on the same block, 1400 block of Hamilton Street, Northwest. You've heard the old saying, love your neighbor, yet pull not down your hedge. Well, there are no hedges between Samaritan Ministry and the King household. Samaritan Ministry Executive Director David Wolf is like our doorbell. He's a fixture outside that door all the time, but we love him for it. I would also like to take a moment to thank our corporate sponsors for their generosity. They cover the cost of this breakfast so that all the gifts and commitments that you make today will exclusively support Samaritan Ministry's work. Without our sponsors, we would probably be eating dried cornflakes on the grounds of the Washington Monument. So I'm going to ask our wonderful sponsors to stand and receive a warm round of applause. The Oric Law Firm, Mortgage Bankers Association, the Arthur Coonrod Law Firm, Sandy Spring Bank, I would also like to ask you to join me in welcoming Bishop Marianne Edgar Buddy, Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington, my bishop. We're so grateful you could join us today, Bishop Buddy. Well, we do have Reverend Kevin Vandiver, Senior Pastor of the Lutheran Church of the Reformation, the newest partner church with Samaritan Ministry. I'm going to ask Pastor Kevin, if you will, to deliver a blessing on our breakfast, and maybe, I don't know if this is theologically possible, but if you could also bless the food that has been consumed already. Pastor Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. King. I'll do my best. Let us pray. Creator God, thank you for this day and this new opportunity to be your hands and feet in this world, for this assemblage of various treasures and gifts in earthen vessels coming together this morning under the banner of Samaritan Ministry. We thank you, sustaining God, that where there is vision, there is also provision, and in that synergy among us, the little that we offer becomes much when we place it in your hands. So use our gifts for your service in our corner of the world. Build up the broken, strengthen the weak, and empower the powerless through this work which we do together, so that people will see the works of our collective hands and ultimately see your shining through the cracks. Thanks also for this food we are currently receiving, have received, and will receive. Bless the hands that prepared it, and let this moment not only be food for our bodies, but also for our souls and for the bodies of countless others who need among us. In the name of the one who was, and who is to come, we pray. Amen. Amen and amen.
Miracles happen. He pulled it off. David Wolf, who is the executive director of Samaritan Ministry, needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Since 2012, David has presided over Samaritan Ministry's vision, extending its programs with an economical reach to the greater Washington area with a dedication and a doggedness that would make St. Paul proud. His roots are deep in our multicultural environment, as is his understanding of need and the necessity of the church performing the role that the Great Samaritan performed on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. I give you David Wolf.
Thanks for that generous introduction, Colby. We're delighted to have you back as our MC a second time, 10 years after the first. And I want you to join me in acknowledging Gwen and Colby, Gwen King, his wife, who together have been our very own mission evangelists and participant advocates for over a decade. So thank you, Colby, and thank you, Gwen, right over there. As you heard, Colby has written about us in his Saturday Washington Post column, little plug for that. But Gwen has also supported individual participants as they work towards their goals, among other things. So we're really grateful for their partnership. Yes, 3 doors down. And I want to welcome all of you here live in the Press Club. Give yourselves a hand for showing up in person. But I also acknowledge those who are viewing virtually. Really happy that you can join us this morning as well. I'm especially pleased whether you're watching virtually or if you're listening here in person for the first time to learn who we are and what we do, because we love learners. We love people committed to learning, growing, and changing. People who know what it means to be stuck in life, to struggle, to find sustainable and meaningful employment perhaps, or an affordable home, or just a way forward after decades of incarceration. People who, as in the Good Samaritan story, are stuck in life's ditch and need not a patronizing handout, but an empowering hand up. The ditch may be deep, right? The result of a bad break, a bad choice, bad public policy, systemic racism, you name it, or all of the above. But my friends, none of that matters when a participant sits down with a Samaritan caseworker, a next step caseworker. Then the only questions that matter are, 1, if you want a better life, what do you think that looks like? 2, are you ready to change and participate in that change by accepting the required coaching necessary to achieve your goal? And finally, will you take the necessary steps, action steps, the next steps to meet your goal? If you commit, if your answer is yes to all those challenging questions, the Next Step staff will give you all the coaching, all the expertise, all the diligent follow-up, and all the technical support you need for as long as you need it, just because you said yes. Now, let's be real. Who among us has not been stuck in life's ditch? Don't you dare raise your hand. What our participants receive in Next Step is what we all need to receive from some source, right? We call it rigorous compassion, which is really two gifts. On the one hand, it's specifically material support and emotional and spiritual encouragement. On the other hand, it's interpersonal challenge and accountability. It's what your best friend or your spouse or your colleague or your pastor says that you would rather not hear. Amen? In biblical terms, it's the truth in love. Rigorous compassion is a gift from someone we trust that empowers us to grow. And Samaritan Ministry offers that gift to folks who typically have no trustworthy person in their life to offer it until they come through our doors. Now at 6 locations with 2 more on tap. With hybrid options and participant pipelines evolving in partnership with nonprofit partner Bite Back and others, we engage and equip an increasing number of participants for an increasingly complex world. Almost 600 in 2022, but an ever-increasing number as the pandemic wanes, thanks be to God, notably returning citizens, workers over 50, yes, you heard that right, the unemployed and underemployed, and young adults lacking essential soft skills or a life plan of any kind. And as part of our Loan to Own initiative, we equip goal-accomplishing participants so they can continue their work at home, not just in our offices, as homey as they are. And many of you know they're homey. We can do all this with your generous help and a heavy reliance on volunteers, not because we're cheap, but because we believe in community collaboration, in a partnership where everyone experiences the change they want to see in the world, both as individuals and as community. So when I speak of empowerment, I speak of how we cultivate change in ourselves and in the community at large. Samaritan's Partner Council is a uniquely partner churches, schools, and mission providers. That's impressive. And frankly, we're making a difference. So what does our immediate future hold? What does it look like? First, we're proud to announce a training partnership with IT trainer Bite Back. In January, we jointly launched the first of many integrated employment training cohorts, combining Strive soft skills training at Samaritan and Bite Back hard skill instruction, all at their location on North Capitol Street. Bite Back partners, will you give a wave? Over here in the back. Yeah. Second, in December 2022, we added adult basic education in a big way to the Next Step repertoire through the merger of Southeast Ministry with Samaritan Ministry. This integration of program services also includes new office space located in Congress Heights, in addition to our Anacostia office in Southeast DC. Former Southeast Ministry staff board and partner reps from Reformation Lutheran. Please wave. You're, I think, in the center back. There you are. Yeah. And third, a longtime association we've had with the Lay Assistance Ministry group of St. Mary's Arlington finally really took hold in person at our Arlington office in 2022, bringing tangible value to Next Step in the form of direct financial assistance for participants led by the St. Mary's team, actively achieving their goals. So the LAM members of St. Mary's, please wave. I think you're back here. There you are, closer to front. Yay. So grateful for that partnership. So in a minute, you'll hear Next Step participant Tyrone King make this come alive. Speak of how, after 30 years of incarceration, he learned how to set goals, navigate the digital world, and most importantly, how to dream again. Then you'll hear Nancy Calvert, a volunteer whose own lived experience and professional training uniquely qualifies her to serve in our Arlington office, herself a living example of empowerment. And then finally, you'll hear from John and Carol Coonrod, she, our former partner council convener. Now, you've heard of people wearing 3 hats. Well, for almost a decade, just at Samaritan, Carol wore 4. Anyway. A quote that's been on my office door since our earliest days, and some of you ought to have this memorized by now, reads, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together." Almost 4 decades later, that wisdom still speaks to who we are and the change work that we're all about, inviting partnership at all levels. Samaritan Ministry wasn't founded to help people with a handout, but rather to participate in one another's liberation, with the implied invitation that those whom we serve will participate in ours if we let them. This demands a level of compassion, commitment, and vulnerability not found in many places. But Samaritan Ministry, as many of you know, isn't just any place. We're a pioneer nonprofit in a region struggling with an increasing socioeconomic gap, due not just to the pandemic, but also to the legacy of systemic racism. A gap between those of us who do very well and those of us who are trying to get a toehold on a steep slope. Some on that slope are Samaritan participants, but all on that slope are our neighbors. So none of this work comes easy. But I believe our cause is just and our recipe right. Compassionate coaching, plus proven training, plus access to opportunity equals the hand-up participants urgently need in our region, especially now. Results do inspire, but I find our recipe to be the most inspiring because it reminds me that my liberation is found in welcoming the stranger, who is really our neighbor in disguise, temporarily stuck in life's ditch. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being the guests you are to each other, but especially to our neighbor, stuck in life's ditch, who is really you and me. Thank you. May God bless you as you bless Samaritan Ministry with your time, talent, and treasure. Thank you. Now please welcome to the stage Tyrone King, our next step participant.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you guys doing today? Good morning. It's spring. Technically, it's spring. Might not feel like it, but it's good to know it's here. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here this morning. You know, I once knew a guy, he did about 30 years in prison. And yeah, when he got home, he went to a department store and he picked up a brick and he threw it right through the window. And he sat right there and waited for the police to arrive. And when the cops came, they asked him, they said, "Why did you do this?" And he looked at him and said, "You know, I don't know anything about this world out here. Nothing makes sense. Take me back to prison where things make sense." And it was heartbreaking, but, because I knew the guy pretty good, and I can really relate to what he was feeling at that time. Because after coming home about 1 year and 11 months ago, after doing 28 straight years behind prison walls, I had a lot of those feelings inside as well. So I totally understand where he was coming from. But during those 28 years behind penitentiary and prison walls, it was God's grace that kept me, and it was only God's grace. You know, it was God's grace that's keeping me now in my transition in this new world. His grace in prison, when my family passed, it was hard. I was a mother's boy. I loved my mother. I had a lot of women in my family. Father died when I was little, so my grandmother, my mother, my aunt, you know, they were like my support, my network. They told me how to do right from wrong as a child, how to go to church, you know, those kinds of things, and how to excel in school and all those kinds of things. So I was very close to them. And when I was in prison, all I ever wanted to do when I get out, well, one of the main things was to make it out before my mom passed, before my brother passed, you know, before my grandmother passed, you know. And when they all passed, during those 28 years, it was hard. You know, a lot of you guys out here, when someone passed, you have a support network. They come over and they give you a hug, you go to the funeral, all these kinds of things. You have an outlet, kind of, you know, deal with it. But when you're in an environment like I was in, where you're trapped in those prison walls in an aggressive environment, bunch of gladiators just, you know, it's tough, because you don't want to cry. You don't want to let your emotions out because, you know, it's not the type of environment. So I sat in those cells dealing with it. And then I tried to go to the funerals. I couldn't go to the funerals of my mom. I couldn't go to the funerals of my brother. And you talking about being rock bottom. During those times, it was hard. When my brother died, I contemplated suicide. And I never thought that would happen. But when I was laying on that concrete floor in that prison cell and about to commit suicide, a letter slid up under the prison door by one of the guards, and it was from my mother. She was already dying of cancer, but she said, "Hold on, you're all I have left." And that right there got me off that prison floor. And I said, "I can't do this. I'm all my mother has left. Just lost my brother, and he was only 30, and it was hard. But it got me that much closer into, like, you know, God, what do you have for me? And it really got me into a much deeper relationship with God. When you're dealing with prison, it's an abnormal environment, so I had to deal with a lot of things in that type of environment. And on top of that, all of my family support was gone. So I was looking forward, I was 21 when I got incarcerated, so I was looking forward to one day when I get released, I can be with my family, and I have that support, and they will help me. So that was all gone. See, the two biggest fears that most prisoners have, men prisoners, one is that you don't want to die in there. You don't want to die alone behind those concrete walls. I said, "God, don't let me die in here," because I had 72 years. 21 when I went in, I said, "God, I don't want to die." Second greatest fear, God, please don't let my mother, my grandmother, if you have kids or whatever, don't let them die before I get home. Let them live to see me make it. Let them live to see me strive to make them proud. Let them see the transformation and the change. And that was one of the biggest fears. And so that, God's grace got me through that. So when I came home, it was a challenge. He got me through those times. It's God's grace that's keeping me right now. It was God's grace that sent me people like Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington to help me navigate through this difficult new world. I never saw a smartphone, for one. When I got home, I never saw it. I remember when it was placed in my hand, I was like, wow. You know, I was trying to text, right? And every time I text, I would hit one letter, and then another letter would pop up. And I would call people and say, what is this stupid stuff? I'm trying to hit the A and the B. What is? You'll get used to it, Tyrone. Just take your time. You know, I never saw the internet. So I was like, wow, because I heard a lot about the internet, you know. I didn't know what a link was, nor did I know how to send a link, you know. Went to the bank to open up a banking account, right? I never forget, he said, you need a password and a username. So a friend of mine went with me. I said, what is it? What is a password and a username? Because I didn't want the guy to know I was incarcerated at the bank, just getting home 5 days ago. Tyrone, just give him some letters. You need like some letters. So I gave him some letters, and that's not strong enough. Try throwing some symbols and some numbers. What the world? I'm giving you some numbers. But it was hard. But it was a new world, and it was difficult, you know. But now, thanks to all the support that I have, from Samaritan Ministry and the great people in my life, God has blessed my life. I have a great job now, making a living wage, great benefits, 401k, dental, vision, and all those kind of things. Things that I dreamed about when I was a young man, you know? Yeah, thanks be to God. God's grace, y'all. God's grace. God's grace got me through all of that. Samaritan Ministry was a great asset because when I came home, they got me involved in the Strive program. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with the Strive program, but it was a great program that taught me all the soft skills that I needed to land, great, decent jobs, cover letters, resumes, how to do great interviews. And I give kudos to Strive. I give kudos to Samaritan Ministry for introducing me to the Strive. But most of all, I give thanks for God's grace for sending the Samaritan Ministry to me, for helping me to transform my life and to do great. So today, like I said, I got a great job. I own my own home in a great neighborhood. That's a blessing. That's a blessing. I thank God's grace, you all. God's grace, But, in the future, I just hope to continue to basically be an advocate, for prisoners who are returning citizens who are just coming home. I'm also currently putting some ideas together to become a public author and to write a book, on, for returning citizens, making that transition, coming home, the difficulties that they face, the changes and challenges that their family faces. Because a lot of people think that, oh, my dad is coming home, it's going to be just like it was or better, or my son is coming home. But what they don't realize, there's going to be a lot of challenges because when you're doing decades in prison, it's a mental thing. It's a mental thing. And one of the hardest parts about doing time like that behind those prison walls, you have to be strong mentally, because especially when you're doing solitary confinement, 23 hours in a cell, months, years at a time. Now, you have to crack that Bible open, and that's what I did. I had to pray. I had to find something bigger than me. I was at rock bottom, so I had to I couldn't do nothing but look up. And I said, Mom, you were right. All the years of my life as a child, when you sent me to those education Bible schools in the summertime, and you made me go to church, and you made me get involved and put me into the Boy Scouts, and you tried to instill all those things into me. I see it now. I see it now, and it's only by God's grace. I don't regret what the things I've experienced because it made me who I am today. It took hell to make me into the man that I am today. With God, all things are possible, you guys. With God, all things are possible. Thank you guys for listening, and you guys have a great one. God's grace. God's grace.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Calvert. I'm honored and humbled to have been invited here to share my story with you. I feel blessed to have had so many amazing experiences during my 31-and-a-half-year career. I spent the first 20 years at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. When I began in 1987, very few women were training to become journeyman marine machinery mechanics, repairing Rosie Riveter. So in 1999, I began working as a technician in the engineering department. While there, I often did at-sea testing on nuclear aircraft carriers. And one of the really cool opportunities that our team had, was finding out how fast a plane stops when it hits the arresting gears on a carrier, and the 0 to oh no sensation you get when you're catapulted off. So in 2007, my husband and I came to Naval Sea Systems Command at the Washington Navy Yard, where I held several positions supporting the U.S. Navy's submarine program. I had the privilege of spending 5 days at sea underway on a ballistic missile submarine. And I tell you, that's a dream come true and oh so cool. After I retired in 2019, I began volunteering at several ministries supported by our church, St. Albans Episcopal in Annandale, one of the founding members of Samaritan Ministry. And I knew that volunteering would allow me to give back to the community and to honor the many people that have helped me along the way. As a volunteer front office coordinator at the NOVA office, I greet participants and I chat with them while they're waiting to speak with a caseworker. During the last 2 years, several interactions with participants have been very meaningful to me, and I'd like to share a couple with you. Last year, a young woman came in who was in a domestic violence situation. I sat with Nevaeh on the porch while Jane Bishop, our lead caseworker, called the police. While we waited for the police to arrive, I chatted with Nevaeh, got her some clothes and food that she could take with her. And she knew that she deserved to be more than a punching bag. And she took that first step to a better life. I was glad that I could be there and let her know that she was not alone. It was a very, very powerful moment for me. This experience reminds me daily how the roles could have been reversed, and I could have been the client had it not been for the compassionate and caring people that helped me along my path, as I too came from a place of pain and suffering. When I was young, somewhere around the age of 9, my father began emotionally and physically abusing me and my 11-year-old brother, Felix. One of the many things that he did was teach us how to box and wrestle so he could watch us fight like a couple of dogs. He'd tell us if we didn't really hit each other, he'd step in and do it for us. At first, we didn't want to fight. We loved each other and we didn't want to put our hearts into it, but that never worked out well for the loser. When I was around 12, my father started calling me horrible names and accusing me of doing things that I wasn't doing. Stealing, drinking, doing drugs. No matter what I said or did, he wouldn't believe me. I was hurt, angry, and began acting out. When I was nearing 14, he started coming into my room in the morning to wake me up with inappropriate touches. I told my mother, but of course he denied it. By that time, my self-esteem was non-existent, and I wasn't sure why my parents didn't love me anymore. I was emotionally drained and wound up taking a handful of my aunt's heart medication. I realized before it was too late that I didn't want to die. I told my aunt. She made sure I made it to the hospital to get my stomach pumped. One night, when I was 14, I called the police after a beating. And the police said they couldn't help me because my mother and father said I'd been in a fight with a friend. I began crying, and a very compassionate police officer said if I refused to go back into the house, he would contact someone that could get me into foster care. Calling the police and taking that first step to leave home remains one of the toughest things I've ever done. Well, in my second foster home, I began having lucid dreams that my father was killing my 4-year-old brother and 2-year-old sister. It was horrific, and I wound up in a mental hospital and was made a ward of the state before being placed in what became my forever foster home. Thankfully, the counseling I received, along with the love, guidance, and boundaries provided by my foster mom, helped me realize that what happened to me as a child was not my fault, and my mom dared me to dream again. When I turned 18, I was emancipated from foster care by the court and was now a family of one. If it hadn't been for my foster mom and dad allowing me to live with them, I too could have been homeless. And there are still times when I can sense that frightened little girl. And when that happens, I count my blessings, do my best to learn what I learned in counseling, and above all, I thank God for his amazing grace. On other occasions at Samaritan Ministries, I've had conversations with participants about their grief and their health struggles. One participant I spoke with just recently lost a dozen family members in the last 2 years, and another was recently diagnosed with a tumor. And I can empathize with their struggles, as my journeys as an adult has burdened me with similar issues. In the late 90s, I had reconnected with my biological siblings and was devastated when each of them passed away. My sister Victoria, at the age of 32, a few hours after giving birth to her only child 16 years ago. And both of my brothers in 2017, Felix in February at the age of 56, and Dave in May at the age of 44. After losing both my foster parents, all my biological siblings, and my birth mother last year, I wondered how my heart would heal. 2 years ago, I had a craniotomy to remove a tumor near my brainstem. Thankfully, it was not in my brain, and it's not cancerous. Unfortunately, the 3-month follow-up shows the tumor's back, and it's the same size. So, still working through the best path forward on that one. My wonderful husband, Bill, of 23 years, my son, Daniel Carruthers, great friends, and extended family have helped me navigate the waters of my life. And I know my emotional wounds will never fully heal, but I found that sharing parts of my journey with participants at Samaritan Ministry is both restorative for me and provides an opportunity to let them know that they are not alone on their journey and there is hope for a brighter future. I believe there's a light that shines in each of us, and I thank God for the people that have helped me and help continue to keep mine lit through their love, compassion, and understanding. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Tyrone and Nancy, for these inspiring, powerful testimonials. You demonstrate why I am so proud to financially invest in Samaritan Ministry. Good morning. I'm John Coonrod. My primary connection with Samaritan Ministry is that I'm married to Carol Coonrod. My own job focuses in countries like Uganda and Bangladesh. And those of us fighting global hunger always have to answer the question, what about our city here? And my financial support of Samaritan is my answer to that question. It connects me to my city and to the people that you've heard here today. Samaritan is based on the same principles as in my global work, principles which are central to my faith: to strive for justice and peace among all people, and to respect the dignity of every person. It is so easy for well-intentioned organizations to undermine human dignity, and Samaritan never does that. Samaritan accompanies people as they clarify and take each next step for themselves. It shows me and each of us that there are very practical ways we can take to build a more just world and to live consistent with our faith. And I never forget this because I'm married to Carol.
I am so in love with this guy. John and I moved to Washington, D.C. 11 years ago, and in that first year, I attended a Next Step breakfast in this room, just like this one where we're gathered today, and I signed on as a volunteer. I also made my first financial gift that morning, and I've done that every year since then. Because I was new in Washington, I began volunteering at Samaritan as a way to make some new friends. I was also recently retired, and I wanted a job that wasn't just helping out. I wanted a job that would challenge me and let me know that I made a difference. I love Samaritan Ministry because transformation is the essence of its mission. For me, transformation is different than change. It's seeing the world with new eyes and a new perspective. At Samaritan, transformation is not limited to the participants. Transformation is available to each one of us as we recognize ourselves in the people we come into contact with at Samaritan. When I hear testimonies like Tyrone's and Nancy's, and hear David express the mission of Samaritan Ministry with such personal conviction, I experience my own humanity through their words, their experience, and their own transformation. I believe that making a significant financial gift is also a route to transformation. We often speak about giving our time, talent, and treasure. When I look back on the 9 years of being almost a full-time volunteer with Samaritan, I know that I gave my very best in time and talent, and I'm proud and grateful that I had a chance to do that in partnership with many of you. I deeply value those friendships and those memories. My treasure, here's what I've learned about sharing one's financial resources. We live in a culture of greed and inequality, a culture that encourages us to seek solace in things rather than connecting with other people and with God. Some of us may have conflicts about how we deal with money. It may be a source of discomfort or even feeling wounded. Our faith journeys call on us to examine those areas of our lives where we are broken, where we suffer, and where we hold back. For me, my money has been a vehicle for opening my heart, for deepening my journey to God. I invite you to think about what you might pledge or commit to Samaritan Ministry this morning for 2023 from your time, talent, and treasure, whether this is your first time encountering Samaritan Ministry or you've been part of the team for years. May I be so bold to ask, will your gift be an expression of your faith journey? Could it be? In thinking about what John and I would pledge this morning, I imagined we would make just a slight increase above what we did last year. But then I realized, just as I've asked you, John and I needed to again ask ourselves what level of gift truly expresses who we are. That amount for us is $10,000. $10,000, which is a 25% increase from last year. It's an increase that causes us to stretch, but that is what transformational giving is all about. Now, I do need to sit down after making that commitment. And here is Jeff Hale to review the pledge form with you. Thank you.
I can't believe I have to follow that. Thank you so much, Carol and John. Your dedication, volunteerism, service, and generosity to Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington over the years is amazing. And I'm so glad that you were able to be here today with us to share your story and to tell us why supporting Samaritan Ministry is important to you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. Ladies and gentlemen, last year we set a new record and raised just over $250,000 in gifts and pledges to support our work with Next Step participants like Tyrone. This year, because we're back in person and because we're also doing a live stream, we're hoping that all of you here in the room, as well as all of you out there watching online, will be inspired by what you've heard and help us reach a new record. I'm hoping for $300,000. By now, you should have received a Next Step pledge form from your table captain. They're there at the table. I'll hold up a sample and I'll walk us through it very briefly. Of course, in the first section up at the top, we just need to know who you are. So please fill that in so that we can thank you, quite frankly. Then in the next section, you'll see there are 3 ways that you can support the wonderful work like Tyrone and Nancy and John and Carol do for us. The first one is to make a pledge for the 2023 calendar year. If you choose this option, you'll be asked to make your first payment today, and then we will send you quarterly reminders through the rest of the year. The only thing we ask is that you please pay your pledge by December 31st. 2, become a monthly sustainer. This is a great way to make regular gifts to Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington, especially if you're new to the organization. Personally, through my own giving, I find that monthly giving allows me to make larger gifts over the course of a year than I might otherwise be able to. And frankly, for the cost of a daily cup of coffee, roughly $85 a month, you would be supporting Samaritan Ministry for over $1,000 a year. It adds up. And the third way is to just make your gifts in full this morning. Now, all of these are good choices because each gift makes the transformational work, like you heard about today, possible. We also want you to know, for security purposes, once your pledge or gift is entered into our secure database, your pledge form will be destroyed. I know there's concerns about paper records and stuff, so all that stuff gets destroyed. For those of you watching the live stream, you can also make a one-time donation or become a monthly sustainer right now. Just go online to SamaritanMinistry.org and click on the Donate Now button. There's a Next Step Breakfast specific form waiting for you. Finally, you've heard about time, talent, and treasure. Please consider volunteering. You've heard firsthand now how volunteers impact the work of our participants and how working with participants also changes our volunteers' lives. There's additional information in your folder about the volunteer opportunities currently available. And I know our volunteer manager, Cy, are you here in the room? Raise your hand. She's probably out at the registration desk. Find her. She will be happy to find the perfect match for you. If you have any questions, please ask your table captain, and they'll collect your pledge forms when you're done. Table captains, as a final reminder, please, please, please remember to turn your pledge forms back in at the registration table and don't take them home with you. Now, while we consider our gifts, I'd like to ask that you please remain seated until everyone has finished making their pledge. And then Colby will return in a few moments to thank everyone who made this morning possible and send us on our way. Again, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank you for joining us in the journey at Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington. Thank you. We'll take 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll have Colby come back up. Thank you.
Well, I see the train is coming into the station. In behalf of Samaritan Ministry, I want to thank you for coming this morning, especially for your commitment of time, talent, and treasure. Time, talent, and treasure. If you failed on the third T, there's time for a do-over. And if you take a pen, leave us 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, if you take a pen. I want to say special thanks to our inspiring witnesses, my namesake Tyrone King and Nancy Calvert. Special thanks also to Carol and John Coonrod. Thanks again to our breakfast sponsors. I want to also give thanks to our photographer, Jay Mellon. He does yeoman's work. I want to give a shout out to somebody you haven't seen, heard from, the speech coach, John Weiner. What would I do without the speech coach? I'm going to thank the folks behind the scenes. A great big thanks to our captain of the captains, table captain organizer Michelle Lewis Mazzotti. And all of our table captains, staff, volunteers. These are the people who made it all possible. I want to say God bless, safe travels. Thank you very much.
Let's give it up for our fabulous MC, Colby King. Thank you all for coming, and God bless you.